Food is a basic necessity, something we all enjoy, crave, and literally can't live without. But what if the very thing meant to nourish us turns into a deadly trap? In this video, we're diving into 5 real-life cases where food led to some of the strangest and most unexpected deaths. From innocent snacks to seemingly harmless meals, these stories prove that sometimes eating can take a terrifying and tragic turn. Buckle up, because these cases will make you think twice before your next bite. April 4th, 2019 was just another regular day for Darren Hickey, a 51-year-old wedding venue manager in Chorley, Lancashire. He ran Ridgemont House with pride, making sure every event went off without a hitch. But Darren wasn't just about business. He was a walking, talking example of resilience. 7 years earlier, he had survived a massive stroke that put him in the hospital for a whopping 18 months. Most people would have slowed down after that, but not Darren. He threw himself into charity work, using his experience to help others, and even won the Stroke Association's Inspirational Person of Courage Award. He was the kind of guy who didn't let life knock him down for long. But unfortunately, fate had one more cruel twist in store. That afternoon, as Darren was wrapping up work, a chef asked him to taste a fish cake for an upcoming event. Simple enough, right? What could possibly go wrong with a tiny bite of food? Well, everything. The fish cake was molten lava hot, and as Darren swallowed, it burned his throat. He winced, but shrugged it off. After all, how bad could it really be? He didn't know it yet, but this seemingly minor burn was far more dangerous than anyone could have guessed. Hours later, his throat started feeling tight and uncomfortable. The pain was getting worse, and something felt off. When he told his partner, Neil Parkinson, about it, Neil didn't like the sound of it one bit and urged him to get checked out. So, Darren went to Chorley Hospital's urgent care ward, expecting a quick checkup and maybe some medication. At the hospital, Darren explained the burning sensation and difficulty swallowing. A healthcare professional examined him, even consulting an ENT specialist from Preston Hospital. But here's the catch. The burn was too deep in his throat to be seen without special equipment. With no visible signs of injury in his mouth or tongue, doctors assumed it wasn't that serious. They handed him some paracetamol, told him to go home, and advised him to come back if things got worse. What no one realized was that Darren was already on borrowed time. Unlike regular burns that blister immediately, throat burns swell up slowly, meaning symptoms can go from, "Hey, it's fine," to, "Oh no, I can't breathe," in a matter of hours. That night, Darren tried to rest, but his condition was deteriorating fast. Around 9:45 p.m., Neil heard some strange, choking noises coming from the other room. Rushing to check, he found Darren gasping for air, struggling to breathe. Panic set in as Neil tried to help, but things escalated too quickly. Darren collapsed right in front of him. In a desperate attempt to save him, Neil called 999, but a delay in locating their address added precious lost minutes to the response time. By the time paramedics arrived, Darren's airway was completely blocked. He was rushed to Royal Bolton Hospital, but there was nothing more that could be done. Less than 12 hours after eating that fish cake, Darren was gone. At the Bolton Coroner's Court inquest, acting senior coroner Alan Walsh called the case a rare and devastating tragedy. Dr. Patrick W., the pathologist who performed Darren's post-mortem, explained just how unusual and dangerous throat burns can be. They're typically seen in fire inhalation victims or industrial accidents, not from a simple bite of food. The symptoms don't seem urgent at first, which makes them incredibly hard to diagnose and treat. The coroner also raised concerns about Darren's care at Chorley Hospital, wondering whether more advanced diagnostic tools could have caught the issue earlier. Representatives from GTD Healthcare and NHS, Greater Preston Clinical Commissioning Group, promised to review the incident to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Darren's sudden passing was a massive shock to his friends, family, and the community. He wasn't just a survivor, he was a fighter, an inspiration, and someone who made the world a little better just by being in it. His charity work and unshakable positivity touched countless lives, making his loss even harder to accept. February 25, 2010, started like any other day in Invercargill, a quiet town on New Zealand's South Island, until Christopher Hodgkinson found his partner of 15 years, Natasha Harris, slumped against the bathroom wall, struggling to breathe. Her breaths were shallow and labored, and despite frantic attempts to save her, Natasha passed away from cardiac arrest. She was just 30 years old. Her sudden death left behind 8 young children and a devastated partner. But what made her passing even more shocking was the culprit behind it. Not drugs, not alcohol, but Coca-Cola. Natasha's Coke addiction had started in her teenage years, but over time, it spiraled out of control. By the time of her death, she was drinking 10 liters of Coke every single day. That's about 18 pints, more than 11 times the recommended daily sugar intake and twice the safe limit for caffeine. Her day started with Coke and ended with Coke, and if she didn't have it, she'd go into full withdrawal mode, shaking, irritable, and agitated. Her mother-in-law, Vivian Hodgkinson, recalled how Natasha would become extremely distressed if there wasn't Coke in the house. It was more than just a craving. It had become an addiction. For years, Natasha dealt with a laundry list of health issues: fatigue, nausea, heart palpitations, and vomiting multiple times a week. She was constantly exhausted, but no one, including her, linked her symptoms to her ridiculous soda intake. Her teeth completely decayed, so much so that they had to be removed. One of her children was even born without tooth enamel, something doctors linked to her high soda consumption during pregnancy. But the real damage was happening inside. An autopsy later revealed that her liver was swollen with fatty deposits from excessive sugar intake. She also suffered from hypokalemia, dangerously low potassium levels that can lead to serious heart issues. Pathologist Dr. Dan Mornan explained that symptoms like muscle weakness, fatigue, and vomiting, which Natasha frequently experienced, were classic signs of this condition. On top of that, the insane amount of caffeine in her system was making her heartbeat dangerously irregular. On the day she died, Natasha hadn't shown any alarming signs of illness, just complained about feeling unwell. Hours later, Christopher found her unresponsive in the bathroom. He called for help, but by the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. The inquest into her death revealed just how catastrophic her Coke addiction had been. Coroner David Crerar ruled that her excessive soda intake was a major factor in her cardiac arrest. He stated bluntly that her death was unlikely to have happened when it did, and how it did without her extreme soda consumption. The toxic combo of sugar and caffeine had thrown her body's metabolism into chaos, leading to fatal consequences. The case sparked a heated debate. Coca-Cola Oceania was not thrilled with the findings, arguing that there was no definitive proof linking their product to Natasha's heart attack. They also insisted they couldn't control how much Coke people chose to drink. In response, the coroner made several recommendations, including caffeine labels on sodas and warning messages about excessive consumption. He also urged New Zealand's Ministry of Health to consider stricter regulations on caffeinated drinks. But not everyone believed warning labels would have made a difference. Catherine Rich from the New Zealand Food and Grocery Council pointed out that Natasha was also a heavy smoker and ignored medical advice for other health issues, suggesting that her lifestyle as a whole played a role in her death. Despite everything, Natasha's family remembered her as a loving mother who put her kids before anything else. She skipped meals to make sure they had enough food and spent weeks planning their birthdays to make them special. But life hadn't been easy for her. Her Coke addiction became her escape, much like how others might turn to alcohol or drugs. It was her way of coping with feeling trapped and overwhelmed. After her death, Christopher struggled to care for their children, who were eventually placed in state care. He also faced financial and legal troubles, making an already devastating situation even worse. Natasha's story is a chilling warning about the dangers of unchecked habits. No one thinks a simple soft drink could be deadly, but her case proved just how extreme the effects can be. Her family hopes her tragic death will raise awareness about the risks of excessive soda consumption and the broader struggles of addiction. October 10th, 2014 seemed like any other day for 75-year-old Vera Williams in Rhyl, Wales. She sat down for breakfast, likely expecting a peaceful morning with her tea and toast, but a sharp fragment of toast had other plans. It lodged itself in her throat, causing discomfort. It was annoying, sure, but life-threatening? It didn't seem that way. However, Vera, who had a history of severe heart disease, decided to get checked out, just in case. She headed to Isbiti Glan Kleds A&E, where junior doctor Noor Ismail examined her. Seeing no immediate signs of serious illness, the doctor sent her home without further tests. No major concerns, just a scratchy throat that would likely heal on its own, or so everyone thought. For the next 2 weeks, the discomfort persisted, but Vera didn't immediately seek further medical attention. Then, on October 23rd, unable to ignore the pain any longer, she returned to the hospital. This time, she was seen by Dr. Adedeji Adeleke. She mentioned neck pain but didn't explain that it had been bothering her since her initial visit. Without that key piece of information, Dr. Adeleke suspected a simple throat infection, prescribed antibiotics, and discharged her. Unfortunately, the real issue remained undiagnosed. The very next day, October 24th, Vera's condition took a terrifying turn. She started coughing up blood and was rushed back to the hospital. This time, doctors weren't taking any chances. They conducted a thorough examination, including a CT scan, which finally revealed the shocking truth. The sharp toast fragment had torn her esophagus, causing a rare and serious condition called esophageal perforation. This kind of injury is extremely rare, occurring in only 3 cases per million people. But in Vera's case, it had led to internal bleeding, with blood leaking into her intestines, explaining her worsening symptoms. At this point, her doctors were faced with a brutal dilemma. The best treatment for an esophageal tear is surgery, but because of Vera's severe heart disease, surgery was simply too risky. With limited options, her medical team focused on managing her condition as best they could. But despite their efforts, her health rapidly declined, and just a few days later, Vera passed away. Her death led to an inquest to determine if earlier detection could have changed the outcome. The investigation found that the doctors had acted appropriately based on the information available at the time. Dr. Marion Hughes, a senior emergency medicine consultant, reviewed the case and explained that esophageal tears are so rare that most doctors wouldn't even suspect them unless there were clear warning signs. Even she, with 40 years of experience, had never encountered a case like this. However, the inquest also exposed some systemic flaws. At the time, the hospital still relied on paper records, making it difficult for doctors to track a patient's history across multiple visits. Coroner Nicola Jones suggested that if the hospital had used electronic records, Dr. Adeleke might have been aware of Vera's previous visit and possibly considered a more serious condition. But even if the issue had been caught sooner, her pre-existing heart condition meant that her treatment options were always going to be limited. Vera's story is a tragic reminder of how a seemingly minor incident, like eating breakfast, can spiral into something far worse. It also highlights the importance of clear communication between patients and doctors, and the need for better hospital systems to ensure that no crucial details slip through the cracks. October 5th, 2020, started like any other morning in Jixi City, northeastern China. A family of 12 gathered for breakfast, ready to dig into a local favorite, Swan Tang Zi, a traditional noodle dish made from fermented corn flour. But what they didn't know was that their meal had been harboring a deadly secret for the past year. These homemade noodles had been sitting in their freezer for 12 months, waiting for their moment. And, unfortunately, that moment came. As the noodles were defrosted and reheated, something seemed off. The 3 youngest family members took one bite, noticed a strange taste, and wisely decided to skip breakfast. But the other 9, they powered through, unaware that this simple decision would seal their fate. Within hours, chaos broke loose. Nausea, vomiting, crippling stomach pain, and overwhelming weakness hit them hard. All 9 were rushed to the hospital, but despite the best medical efforts, 7 had died by October 10th. Just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, 2 more, including a 47-year-old woman named Lee, passed away by October 12th. In just 1 week, the entire group who ate the noodles was gone. Doctors were baffled. What could have possibly wiped out an entire family so quickly? The answer came when tests revealed the culprit, bonchrecic acid, a lethal toxin produced by the bacterium Burkholderia gladioli. This nasty poison thrives in fermented foods like corn flour noodles, and to make matters worse, it's tasteless, odorless, and heat-resistant. That means reheating the noodles did absolutely nothing to destroy the toxin. The fermentation process had gone wrong during the year the noodles were frozen, creating a breeding ground for this deadly bacteria. Once ingested, bonchrecic acid went straight for the liver, kidneys, heart, and brain, causing rapid organ failure. Without immediate intervention, which in this case didn't exist, death was almost inevitable. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the community. Health authorities launched an urgent public warning, telling people to be extra cautious with fermented foods. They advised against using moldy, soaked, or improperly stored grains, emphasizing that freezing alone doesn't kill dangerous bacteria. It just pauses their growth until they're thawed and ready to strike again. The younger family members' decision to trust their instincts and avoid the odd-tasting meal had saved their lives, serving as a chilling reminder that sometimes your taste buds know best. This heartbreaking incident underscored a critical lesson. Food safety is not something to take lightly. While people know about food poisoning, bonchrecic acid is far less known, but no less dangerous. In response, Chinese health officials ramped up awareness efforts, urging people to follow strict guidelines when fermenting foods at home. The government issued public safety advisories, emphasizing the importance of hygiene, proper storage, and knowing when to just throw food away. What started as an ordinary breakfast turned into a devastating reminder that food preparation isn't just about taste. It can mean the difference between life and death. On July 14, 2024, Pan Xiaoting, a 24-year-old popular live streamer, sat in front of her camera, ready for another one of her legendary mukbang sessions. Mukbang, a South Korean-born trend, involves eating massive amounts of food while chatting with an audience. It had made Pan an internet star, with thousands of viewers tuning in. On this day, her ambitious feast, a staggering 10 kilograms of food, including seafood, chicken fingers, and chocolate cake, would be her last. Pan's journey into mukbang started in her early 20s when she was working as a waitress. She noticed how much people loved watching others eat online and decided to jump on the trend, and it worked big time. She quickly gained a massive following, pulling in views, money, and gifts from fans who couldn't get enough of her jaw-dropping food challenges. Some of her streams lasted up to 10 hours, as she devoured plate after plate while engaging with her enthusiastic audience. But the darker side of this extreme lifestyle soon caught up with her. Pan had already been hospitalized for gastric bleeding, a clear warning sign that her body was struggling. Her parents begged her to stop, but she assured them she could handle it. By July 2024, however, she weighed around 300 kilograms and was morbidly obese, yet she kept pushing her limits for the sake of content. On that fateful day, Pan started her mega feast as usual. First, chocolate cake, then crispy chicken fingers, followed by a mountain of seafood. Her audience was divided. Some cheered her on, while others worried about her health. As the hours passed, things took a turn for the worse. Suddenly, in the middle of her stream, she collapsed. Shocked viewers watched helplessly, frantically trying to alert emergency services, but it was too late. The stream continued briefly before the platform shut it down. The news of her tragic death spread quickly, leaving fans devastated. An autopsy later confirmed what many had feared. Her stomach had ruptured. Overwhelmed by the sheer amount of undigested food, the rupture allowed stomach acid and food particles to leak into her abdomen, leading to fatal complications. Her body had simply given up under the extreme strain. Pan's sudden death sparked a wave of concern and outrage. Mukbang had started as a way to combat loneliness, letting viewers share a meal with their favorite streamers. But over time, it had evolved into a dangerous spectacle, rewarding those who could consume the most food in the shortest time. Pan was not the only one facing these risks. Other mukbang influencers like Nikocado Avocado had also made headlines for their extreme eating habits and deteriorating health. Doctors and psychologists stepped in, warning about the dangers of binge eating for entertainment, including obesity, digestive disorders, and even life-threatening conditions like gastric rupture. Despite China's 2021 anti-food waste law, which banned extreme mukbang content, Pan had found ways to bypass the rules and continue streaming, driven by fame and financial success. But was it worth it? Her story raised serious ethical questions about social media culture. Should platforms regulate extreme content more strictly? Should influencers be held accountable for promoting harmful behaviors? And most importantly, how far should people go for online fame? Pan's tragic death is a harsh reality check on the pressures influencers face. The internet rewards bigger, crazier, more extreme content, pushing creators to risk their health for views, likes, and money. If Pan had listened to her family, if mukbang hadn't become such a viral sensation, would things have been different? Maybe, maybe not. But one thing is clear, her story is a sobering reminder of what happens when entertainment crosses the line into self-destruction. For those who enjoy mukbang, it's worth remembering that behind the screen, behind the food, there's a real person. And sometimes, the cost of content creation is far too high.